Well, that was pretty frustrating. I just recorded 2 videos and found out that the sound wasn't working. So let me just talk you through these. I already have all the solutions written here. Um, so what I was saying was that you're going to use these 2 formulas whenever you do these geometric sequence and series problems. You're going to use the term formula when you want to find the term, the nth term, and you're going to use the sum formula whenever you want to find the sum of the first n terms. Okay? So first question, consider the geometric sequence -16, a, -4. For which the common ratio is a half. Oh, they're already giving us the common ratio. The common ratio is a half, okay? And we already know U1. U1 is -16, okay? Um, Now they want to know what A is. Well, A appears to be the second term. So A is actually equal to U2. And U2, of course, using the term formula, is equal to U1 times R to the 1. Why to the 1? Because n minus 1, 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay? And now we do know that -16 is U1, so we just put -16 in there. We multiply by 1/2, which is our value of R. And then we get -8. So the answer to A, which is asking for the value of A, is -8. Find the value of the 8th term. We can put U8 equals U1 times R to the 7th. Why to the 7th? Because n is 8, n minus 1 is 7. And that's equal to U1, which is -16, times R, which is a half, to the 7th. And you can do that in your calculator. Okay, next problem. The second term of a geometric sequence is 18, and the fourth term is 8. So U2 is equal to 18, U4 equals 8. All the terms are positive. We don't know why they're saying that yet, but we'll figure that out. Find the value of the common ratio. Okay, so we're just going to find the value of R. Well, this isn't a very straightforward problem because they never gave us U1. We always have U1 before. So how do we do this? We're going to make 2 equations and 2 unknowns. One of the equations is going to be U2 equals U1 times R to the first. Why to the first? Because n minus 1 is 2 minus 1 equals 1. Okay, the other equation is going to be U4 equals U1 times R to the third. Why to the third? Because n is 4, 3 is n minus 1. So we have 2 equations, and we don't know U1 and we don't know R, but we do know U2 and we do know U4. So U2 is 18, we put that in. U4 is 8, we put that in. And then we're going to solve for U1. So we take both sides, we divide by R, and then we get U1 equals 18 divided by R. And then we're going to take that and we're going to substitute it in here. We're going to put it in for the U1 here, and then we end up with 8 equals 18 over R times R cubed. And R cubed divided by R is R squared, right? So we get R squared on the right, and we get 8 divided by 18 on the left. And then we can divide both 8 and 18 by 2. It's a common factor, and we get 4 over 9. And 4 over 9 equals R squared. 4 over 9 is a perfect square, so we get R equals 4/9, or R equals -4/9. Now we know why they said all terms are positive. Because if all terms are positive, that means the multiplier is positive. If the multiplier was negative, then alternating terms, every other term would be negative, and we know it's not. So we know that the R factor we want is the positive one and not the negative one. Okay. Next problem. Geometric sequence 16, 8, P has a common ratio of 0.5. Find the value of P. Well, P is the third term. So we're going to use this equation, U3 equals U1 R squared, to find U3. And why R squared? Well, because 2 is n minus 1, n being 3. Okay? So the first term is 16, so we put that in for U1. The R value is 0.5, so we put that in for R. And then it's squared because n minus 1 is 2. Okay? So you can just put that in your calculator and calculate that out. Next thing they want you to know is find the sum of the first 15 terms. The sum of the first 15 terms would be S15. The equation would be U1 times 1 minus r to the 15th over 1 minus r. How do I know I'm supposed to use this one and not the one with r minus 1, r to the 15th minus 1? Well, it doesn't really matter. Either one you use is going to give you the same answer. It's just sometimes it's more convenient when r is smaller than 1 to use this one. But don't worry about that because you can choose either one, you get the same answer. U1 is 16, and then r is 0.5. So we substitute everything in here, and you just put it in your calculator and calculate it. Okay, next one. The first three terms of geometric sequence are -2, 6, -18. State the common ratio for this sequence. Okay, so the common ratio is going to be, we're going to be able to find it from the term formula, which is U2 equals U1 times r to the first. Why r to the first? Well, because n is 2, this is n minus 1. So U2 is going to be 6, right? U1 is going to be -2. So we have 6 equals -2 divided by r, or times r. How do we find r? Well, we divide both sides by -2. And then we end up, with the right side, we have r. On the left side, we have -6 divided by 6 divided by -2, which is -3. We just found r. Okay? And r is a negative number. And that shouldn't surprise us because if you look at the sequence, it alternates between positive and negative numbers. The only way that can happen is if the multiplier is negative. Calculate the sum of the first 10 terms of the sequence. Well, that would be S10. What's the formula for S10? You just substitute n equals 10 into one of the formulas of S10 above. It could be either one, the one that's 1 minus r, or the one r minus 1. They'll give you the same answer. And then you substitute in r equals -3, and you substitute in u1 equals -2, and that'll give you the solution. Okay, last one. It's a word problem. When we get these word problems, you have to be really careful about using the term formula or the sum formula because n is sometimes not what it seems. It says find out how tall the plant is after 10 weeks. So you might think, hey, n equals 10. Well, you have to be really careful because the beginning of the problem might be saying that the beginning is 0 instead of 1, and then n is no longer going to be 10. You don't understand what I'm talking about, but let's write it out and then you'll see. Okay, so if the first week the height is 0.8, what is the height the second week? Well, we need to figure out the multiplier. The multiplier, it says it grows 2% per week, so the multiplier would be 2% plus 1. Okay, because you always multiply by 2%, and whatever you get, you're going to add it back to the original value, which is like multiplying by 1. So if you're going to multiply by 2% and increase by that amount, what you're really doing is you're going to multiply by 1.02. Okay, and this is just like the investigation we did. There was something very similar. Okay. So the next week we would multiply the multiplier 1.02 times 0.8, and that would give you the end of the first week, right? Because at the beginning of the time it was 0.8. Now at the end of the second week we'll have 1.02 squared times 0.8. At the end of the third week we'll have 1.02 cubed times 0.8. And do you see the pattern here? End of the third week, we're doing the exponent 3. So at the end of 10 weeks, we'll have the exponent 10. Okay, so if we want to find out how tall a plant is after 10 weeks, we would do 1.02 to the 10th times 0.8. Okay, and if you notice, that is not the formula for U10. U10 would be equal to 0.8 times 1.02 to the 9th. And here we're multiplying by the 10th. Why is that? Well, it's because in the end, in this problem, 1 is not exactly U1. Okay, the end of first week is not U1. It's actually U2. Or you could think of the first week as U0. But the easiest way to do it is, in word problems that are confusing, usually there's not a lot of n is not a big number, so you can write it out like this and figure out what the pattern is without using the term formula. Okay? All right. So that's it for this section.